Hey, welcome back to another live stream here up on the channel. Nick here, talking science of endurance and everything sports science in general. Can't wait to get stuck into some of our questions for tonight. Answering your questions, sports science, endurance, the works. Had some great discussions the last few weeks, even though we had a couple of hiccups last week where the stream went down momentarily, got things back up, and then we got cut off at the end. A bit of an interesting time for anyone who's watching on the replay or joining us. My laptop essentially blew itself up. The fans were going bananas, and my camera here was also burning hot at the end of last week. So we're trying to avoid that this week. Hopefully I've got a little bit better setup. If you're hearing a little bit of a whirring sound in the background, I do have a fan set up on the desk. It is quite warm here tonight in Melbourne, sort of high 20 degrees. So upstairs where I am now, I've got the sun pouring in the window all afternoon, so it keeps it nice and cool just having a little fan here. So I tried to keep that as out of the way as possible, but if you do hear that little bit of a whirring sound in the background, apologise. Hopefully it doesn't come up too much through the microphone that I've got here. I am looking at getting a slightly better microphone because I've had a look back at some of the quality of the replays, and as much as you might be enjoying them and can still hear things clearly, I'm just being a bit picky about it at the moment, so might be getting involved into a new microphone that's going to give us a much better audio quality to be able to deliver the live streams, not only when we're up here live, but then also when you're watching on the replay as well. So looking forward to getting stuck into this question tonight. I know a few of you jumped in. Say hello when you jump in by saying hello in the chat. Keen to always see who is here because for the most part, until you say something in the chat, I can only see numbers on a screen of how many people are getting involved. So I'm not able to see who's in there. So if you can jump in the chat, say hello. As always, get your questions in. Happy to answer them. We'll sort of kick things off shortly. Give it a couple of minutes to get people in. And the earlier you get your question in, the more chance we've got to get to it nice and early. A couple of things I do want to tick off before we do get into some of the questions. You'll notice in the chat a couple of little comments I've put in there already. First of all, a bit of a welcome post. Get those questions in. Awesome to see a few of you already in here. I'm seeing the numbers grow on the screen as we go. Channel members, and you'll see our little badges pop up, and Aaron's just put his first question into the chat. So you'll see the little badge next to a channel member's name. If you want to support the channel above and beyond, just commenting and subscribing, sharing the videos regularly throughout the week, getting involved in the live stream, jumping over to Instagram, saying hello, whatever it might be. If you want to join in and support the channel above and beyond, we're at 5 channel members already. At 10, we're going to be dropping a new perk to the channel membership. So at the moment, it's just a bit of priority in terms of getting back to questions in the chat as well while we are live. But as soon as we get to 10 channel members, a new perk is going to be dropped, and then benchmarks after that, we're going to be dropping new memberships. So if you want to join up, hit the join button down below the bottom of this video. For less than a coffee a month, you can be a part of Team NJ Sports Science and just gain a little bit better access to me, first and foremost, but then also some really cool perks that will be coming your way in the not too distant future. Also, if you're not maybe interested in jumping on as a member, that's fine. There's no pressure to. But if you are getting a lot of value out of these live streams and the question and answer sessions, the videos, etc., you just want to make a small donation, you can by using the super chat feature. Over on the, I'm going to point in the correct direction here. Over on this side down the chat, you'll see a dollar symbol. Click on that one, and you'll be able to make a small donation to the channel. Again, not necessary. If you're getting value though, and you feel like you want to contribute more to the channel and help this channel grow, and help me be able to produce these videos and jump on the live streams, go and leave a little donation over there. If you join up as a member, absolutely no need to donate as well. The membership is more than enough, but appreciate the support on the channel regardless. Let's kick things off because we've already got our first question in. And Aaron, as always, jumping in. Great to hear you here or see you here, whichever way you want to look at it. Tonight's first question, wondering whether you've had issues with heart rate monitor dropouts during your activities. I upgraded my Garmin to Wahoo Ticker X, and both suffer from this issue. A really interesting one because we've talked about error in technology over the last couple of weeks, and we talked about consistency of device use. I know we definitely touched on that a couple of weeks ago in terms of wrist space versus chest strap. I think in terms of the dropouts, really a lot of this, a lot of the issues stem from the electrodes not picking up a heart rate. If we're talking about a heart rate strap in particular, and in the case of a Garmin versus a Ticker X, I would assume we're talking about the heart rate straps here and the chest strap rather than the wrist-based. But a lot of it comes down to making sure the electrodes have a little bit of water on them, a bit of saliva, whatever it might be. Because really the reason for that is water is a really good conductor of electricity. So all that's going to do is help get that electrical impulse from the heart that we're trying to monitor and measure into the electrode in the heart rate strap. I've actually done a video on this if you go way back now, talking about the difference between chest strap and wrist-based heart rate, the breakdown of how those heart rate straps work. We want that electrode to pick up that signal and have good conductivity. So water on there is always a good start. If you've gone through that process and done a bit of water as well, the other thing we sometimes see issues with is dropouts occur when there's just a bit of body hair there as well, or something impeding. Can happen with a lot of athletes, particularly males, obviously. Something in the way of that. Make sure it's nice and flat. Outside of that, things like battery is a key one to look at. We've had some issues over the last little while since we reopened the lab. We went back in, didn't think about it at first, went, oh yeah, great, we'll chuck some heart rate monitors on, and for some athletes who were coming in for testing, realised that some of the batteries were flat just because they were lacking use. So it's the type of thing that making sure if you're going to be using those heart rate straps regularly, the batteries are working and charged. I know some devices allow you to recharge rather than insert a new battery into it. Outside of that, always keep your devices up to date, whether it's your watch, whether it's your phone, bike, computer. Run the updates just in case there is any change to ANT Plus or Bluetooth. Outside of all those things, it can be a bit more difficult to pinpoint exactly what's going on. A few little tweaks we've used in the past, or I've used in the past, to make sure things are working, is give your chest strap a really good clean, or the back of the sensor. Like if I take this off now, the back of the little optical sensor, make sure it's nice and clean. There's no dust or dirt or even sodium stains from sweat and things like that. Make sure everything is nice and clean so that when you get into that session, it's going to conduct again well. If there is any interference there, it might be coming from a bit of that. If you're finding some of these issues are happening towards the back end of sessions where you are sweating quite heavily, maybe every so often just get your hand under there and just give it a quick wipe. Particularly when we talk about training, that might also just open up the electrode as well. So really, when we have dropouts, just go through that basic process of, is everything nice and flat? Is it completely against the skin? Is the strap tight enough so it isn't completely crushing and compressing your rib cage, but it's firm enough that it's going to get that conductive or that contact between the skin and the actual electrode. Make sure there's a bit of water on there. Make sure it's nice and clean as well. Battery's working, all your devices are updated and reconnected. Outside of that, some of the time it's like I said, it's a little bit harder to pinpoint what might actually be going on. You might just have a dud. You might just have a dud heart rate strap, for example. It might just be on its last legs. If it's a relatively new one, that's unfortunate, but I would definitely get back in contact with the company that it was, whether it's Garmin, Tikka, or Wahoo, Polar, whatever company is making it. Definitely something that I would look at as well. Aaron's just going to follow up to this, and this is actually a really good point, because I hadn't thought to bring this up, but now that you mention it, it does actually make a bit of a difference. I'll give an example from the lab. I changed the batteries before splurging on the Tikka X. Could static build up from my running shirt interfere? Too much sweat could be it too. Definitely. He's also said here, dud athlete. Probably not, mate. It's probably not you. It's always the device. I always back the side of the athlete before anything. But that interesting point on static, something that we get a bit of interference on in the lab is when we hook athletes up to the treadmill in particular. We put a harness on, so when they're running, doing a VO2 max test, pushing themselves as hard as they can, if they slip or fall or go off the back, there's something to catch them. That little clip that we have across the front actually sits almost perfectly where the heart rate monitor is, and we get a bit of interference from that rubbing on top of it. So a thick running shirt or a thick set of clothing that is rubbing against that heart rate monitor may be causing a bit of static as well. Could also maybe be a cause of interference in that heart rate monitor. We often, if that's the case, we just get them to clip. I mean, they're hooked in by their shoulders pretty securely, so we just get them to unclip that little heart rate strap. Not the heart rate strap. We get them to unclip the little buckle that would sit across and bring the two arm straps together, because it doesn't actually necessarily hold them in any tighter. It's just there as a backup, but then also is a little bit more comfortable than them flicking around. Similar type setup, if we're trying to visualize that, is what you might have with like a Camelback or an ultra runner. So something to be aware of as well for our longer distance guys out there who are racing with packs on or running with packs on, whether it be just a fluid hydration pack or whether it be more than that. You might be getting some interference from any chest straps that you're clipping up on your backpacks, things like that. Commuting to work on the bike is also another one. These are all interesting parts that could be influencing could be influencing that dropout in reading. Again, just go through that process of ticking off the big ticket items. Have I checked this? The strap's clean, battery's charged, everything's connected as it should be. Everything's up to date in terms of software. maybe it is a case of try a different shirt on your next run or try a different shirt on your next ride. If it's not getting that interference, maybe it is a bit of that static that's just building up because of the material of the shirt. I tend to wear a mix of materials, and sometimes the when I say the shiny-ish materials, like you know what I'm talking about, the when it's not like a cotton shirt or things like that. I know they're a little bit more comfortable, but you can get different the different blends of material that go into some of those running shirts can also be quite different in terms of how much static they produce as well. So something to bear in mind when you're looking at it. But as I said, keeping everything nice and clean is always a good way to start. Making sure everything's charged is the way to go. Great question though, because I know a lot of athletes have issues with that interference. I've had issues with the interference before, depending on the type of heart rate strap too. And you may also find it's just the difference in terms of the placement of the electrodes. I know they're all quite similar, but Garmin might fit better than what a Wahoo ticker does in terms of the strap shape. That's perfectly fine. You might find the opposite way. You might find Polar actually fits your body shape a little bit better because you can tighten it a little bit more, a little bit less. All these things are also critical to avoid dropout. There's no point having a heart rate strap. They all should be relatively adjustable, but I know most of them can only go so far. So making sure it actually is adjusted for your size and is an appropriate heart rate monitor for what you need is also a big consideration. Maybe a wrist-based option is a better one because of I know personally my ribs don't actually align. I can put my hand on my ribs on my right hand side, put my hand across, and I've actually got a big gap that I can slide this down. I'm not exaggerating this. I'm actually putting it nice and flat across my chest. Hopefully you can see it there. I've actually got a gap that I can slide my hand through just because of the positioning of my rib cage. So making sure the strap sits a little bit to the left so it doesn't sit on that ridge and not completely contact the skin on my left hand side is a consideration I look at as well. A little tweak, it gives me more accurate heart rate data rather than if I pull it around and put the little buckle or the chip on that little ridge, well, it pushes the heart rate strap up a little bit and actually get a bit of a gap underneath. So all these things are the types of things you need to consider. But definitely a good point there in terms of making sure we're getting accurate data and we're getting consistent data coming through rather than getting dropouts is a key thing for our training, our racing, the whole works, because then the analysis later is a little bit easier to do and manage. Great question to start us off. Really good start. I know a few of us are in now. Make sure you do say hello in the chat. Good morning over on the other side of the world. Obviously, we have a lot of people from all around the world who watch these videos. People from, like, obviously, I'm in Melbourne here, but I have New Zealanders watching. We have people in the US who jump in every now and then. We have people over in the UK and Europe as well. So welcome to it, wherever you are in the world. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it might be. Jump in, leave your questions. Happy to answer them and looking forward to getting through a couple more as we move through tonight's live stream. For those of you who missed at the start, last week, unfortunately, I'm not able to get too much more other than the replay that was streamed directly to YouTube. Had a bit of an issue with a corrupt file because what happened at the end of the stream was that my laptop kind of blew up. Camera was burning hot. I don't want to say it was on fire because it wasn't, but it felt like it. It was very hot to touch. And basically the stream just shut itself down right at the end. So we got through everything. We had a bit of a dropout, fixed it, and then it just shut itself down. So it's the type of thing that I wasn't able to go through and edit a highlights version of last week's, and I'm not going to be able to. I did put up highlights video from the week before though, so some great questions that we had in that discussion. If you missed it, go check that one out. That went up yesterday. And also another great video about heart rate and stroke volume that went up on Monday. They got some really good discussion going in the comments on the back of a question from a previous video. So talk about how can we increase stroke volume, get that heart nice and efficient so we don't have to beat as frequently. We can be a lot more relaxed and comfortable when it is pumping. Moving into our next question from Alex tonight. Is it possible to have strength training for both strength and for muscle endurance? What workouts would you recommend? I'm going to make a little assumption here, Alex, in that you're doing some sort of endurance training rather than just in the gym. Let me know if not, because I can change how I answer this a little bit. But in the case where we've got an endurance athlete who's doing strength training and we're trying to work on maximal strength, so increasing the amount of force we can produce in the muscle, increasing how much load we can lift, whatever it might be, expressing power. So I know for cycling, obviously a big one. If we can lift more weight in the gym, that is typically going to transfer over pretty well to pushing out higher peak power on the bike. You definitely can. When we're looking at strength specifically and maximal strength, types of workouts, keep it really simple. When I say lower body push, that could be a squat. It could be a split squat, so a Bulgarian or a lunge, that type of movement. Could also be like a leg press. Whatever is comfortable. It's something where you're pushing the weight away from you, more quad dominant. Something that is more hamstring and glute dominant, so deadlift, RDL, so Romanian deadlift, single leg deadlift, Any type of Olympic lifting variation is a good one. So clean, power clean, power snatch, whatever you want to do, there's going to give you that extension. Basic exercises, maybe work on some upper body if you want to as well, depending on your sport. Upper body push up, lower body pull. But if we're talking about what do we then have to do, it's really, I typically go with a set range of anything less than about 8 reps is going to give us more of a strength stimulus. Get the weight up there. So we're talking RPE wise, we want to be hitting like an 8 out of 10 or more. Get the weight up there, or get the effort up there, because you may be not lifting massive amount of weight, but it's going to be relative to you, of course. So 8 out of 10 is a good guide, or 9 out of 10. 3 sets of 8, for example, and then progress that to 3 sets of 6 and lift the weight, 2 sets of 4, etc. We want to be doing smaller amount of reps, really high quality, and then long rest periods is really good for strength. We won't be producing as much force through the ground as we possibly can. We can then transition that into power and get some rate of force development happening, but that's kind of going a bit on a tangent from the actual question here. To then work that in with our endurance, basically all the endurance is coming from your sport. So whether that be cycling, running, swimming, all of that is going to be your muscular endurance, providing contraction after contraction after contraction to produce that movement. I typically will then not do in the gym much around muscular endurance, and very rarely will take my athletes over 10 reps in a single set, purely because it's not going to do too much more. You're better off going out. If we're going to do sets of 15, 20 and do like 5 sets of 20, go out and run for 5 minutes and you're going to, or go out and run for 10 minutes, you're going to have the same amount of contraction. So I'd rather just add that onto their training load somewhere else in the week. There's no point going and doing extra endurance in the gym because it's not doing anything more. You're better off doing the specific work, and a lot gets thrown around in terms of sport specific type training in the gym. What's more sport specific than actually doing your sport? Nothing. So go out and do cycling that instead, but in the gym, keep it lower rep, get the weight up there. We can play around with power and things like that, but for strength purposes, typically, really 3 sets of 4 to 3 sets of 8 is kind of my go-to. Reasonably high load, like I said, 8.5 out of 10, really pushing hard, but have plenty of rest in between. We're having like 2-3 minutes rest between sets. You might do like a lower body exercise and then go straight into an upper body and alternate like that. That's a good way of making most of your time, but not necessarily do like, don't do a set of squats, for example, and have like 60 seconds rest and go back in and do another one because you just fatigue yourself. And that's more in the hypertrophy range then. As we get lower, you might even do like a good set that I like to do for strength and building just base strength would be a descending type of setup to get a little bit of load in the system. So it'd be like 2 sets of 8 squats, and then you increase the weight on the bar, 2 sets of 6, increase the weight on the bar, 2 sets of 4, increase the weight on the bar, 2 sets of 2. Each set, though, it takes a little while, but that would be all I would be doing in that session, for example. Maybe some upper body and some accessory type exercises, calf raises, things like that, maybe some core at the end, but the primary focus of the set is just that one big key movement, and I'm just getting the weight is increasing, but I'm reducing the number of sets to compensate for that. And so I'm getting these really forceful contractions, getting the nervous system firing as best I can, recruiting as much muscle mass as I can. Maybe increasing a little bit of muscular size is going to hurt here and there, but it's definitely going to increase the strength of the muscle rather than going to the gym is doing high amount of really low load, so low weight, high amount of reps. Muscular endurance, like I said, that's basically what you're doing if you're a cyclist or a runner, is low amount of weight in terms of I'm carrying my body weight as opposed to carrying my body weight plus a bar that's got weight on it if I'm running. And I'm producing contraction after contraction. There's my muscular endurance. So I keep it as simple as that. That's all I would do. Really 2 sessions a week, one that's maybe a bit more squat focused, one that's maybe a bit more deadlift focused, and then you can alternate. So on the squat day, I might do something like a bench press, a bench pull, or a seated row. So I've done lower body push and upper body pull. On the deadlift day, I do lower body pull, upper body push. So I might do like a bench press variation, or an overhead press, or a landmine press. Then do some extra stuff, like if you want to do any specific hamstring work or calf work, core work, anything like that, you can do it at the end. That's fine. But I keep it really, really simple. So hopefully that gives you a bit more of an insight. I know it's a bit rushed answer there. I could go into a little bit more detail in what we're talking about there, but hopefully it gives you a bit more of an insight in terms of where I sort of head in the process I head down in regards to strength and fitting that in and around endurance, and the types of sessions I'd be doing to develop strength versus the endurance is going to come from your sport-specific practice and training. Great question, because it's a really, really sort of hot topic, particularly through COVID. A lot of athletes doing some do some at-home gym work, getting home gyms, things like that, or getting some equipment to do some strength conditioning because that's all they've got access to. So how do we fit that in now that all our sports are coming back and we're racing and things like that again? Interesting balance, but two good quality sessions a week like that is going to be perfect, perfect for your development and push your performance up quite significantly. Moving into our next question, a VO2 max one. I love the VO2 max questions, which is always good to have them on. Is VO2 max that important for runners? Some high level runners around 1 hour for half marathon and 2:10 for full don't have the highest scores with numbers like 62 and up. Really interesting question. So I did do a video quite a long time ago, and if you haven't seen it, that's fine because it was a while ago, but go back and find it, talking about is VO2 max actually the be all and end all? Is it something we need to be focused on in terms of boosting up as high as we can? The short answer is no, but the long answer is it depends on the type of event, and this is where things start to split. Really, it's a case of, and what I might do while I'm talking through this, I might actually try and find the video and find the graphic that I want to show you, because I did put it up on the screen for the video while I was talking through it. But in terms of VO2 max, critical if we're talking about a short distance event, anything less than about 5Ks. If we're talking running, let's stay with running because that's what the question was. If we're talking running, anything less than 5Ks in length, VO2 max is a really critical indicator of our performance because the intensity is up there, right? It's up and above threshold. We're working pretty hard. It makes sense. The highest VO2 max is going to be a solid indicator. As we get closer to 5K to say 10K to half marathon, the amount that we rely on in terms of VO2 max as an indicator starts to drop a bit because it's not, I mean, VO2 max at the end of the day is like a 5 to 7 minute flat out effort. Percentages of that between that and threshold, it makes it obviously the bigger the VO2 max, the more likely you're going to be able to run faster in that sort of range. As the event gets longer and longer, we're holding a lower and lower percentage of that VO2 max. So it's more about things like running economy. It's more about things like fractional utilization of VO2. What do I mean by that? Where does your threshold sit in percent as a percentage of VO2 max? Who has the highest pace at threshold? So let me just quickly go through and find the video so I can bring the graphic up because it's a really good illustration of how things change as the distance gets longer. But apart from anything, I do, without plugging the video too much, I do want you to go and have a look at it because I do go into quite a bit of detail of why and how things change. I'll quickly scroll through and try and find it, but really a simple answer is long distance events, you don't actually have to have the highest VO2, but we have to consider that something like 62 is a pretty good VO2 max. Like it's pretty solid. A lot of people would struggle to get to 62. By no means is it amazing in terms of the highest numbers we've ever seen, but the running economy, and basically what running economy is oxygen cost for that output is quite good. So that means they don't necessarily need to use massive amounts of oxygen to produce that really fast speed, which is obviously going to be far more sustainable, less fuel utilization for that same output. They're just really, I don't want to say efficient because that's slightly a different term, but they're really effective at producing that speed, which is going to be a major contributor to performance rather than just how high that oxygen consumption go. Whereas the shorter distance events, if you have a really high oxygen consumption in terms of VO2 at a high pace, what does that end up looking like? Well, it minimizes the anaerobic output, maximizes the aerobic output, and you're going to fatigue a little bit later in that event. That's pretty much the summary we're looking for. I'm just going to quickly find, I want to make sure I get the right video here. It is a long time ago. One of the earlier videos on the channel, I'm back in July looking on my screen here. I'm scrolling back through the videos from July. Here we go. Does VO2 max actually matter? Is the one we're talking about. So let me just quickly bring it up on the screen. It's going to be a little bit laggy. I don't want to play it, but I just want to get to that point in the video. Screen share so you can see what I'm doing as well. Just so I can show you that graph because I think it'd be quite useful. While I do that, thank you so much, Alex, for jumping in. Big fan of the channel. I really appreciate the support on the channel. As I said right at the beginning, anyone who jumps in, joins these conversations, it helps the channel grow by sharing videos, subscribing, whatever it might be. Absolutely love your support, and hopefully all the content that we're making here is going to some good use. So definitely appreciate you jumping in and expressing your enjoyment of the channel. It really does mean a lot. All right, might have to skip through what I'll do is I'll come back to it once it's loaded, and I'll try and keep an eye on it. But pretty simply, it's the longer the event, the less reliance on VO2. The shorter the event, the more reliance on VO2 is where we're headed overall. I might actually have it. Let me think. I might have in my uni notes. I think I've got that graph. I'm trying to remember what subject it's in now. That might be a quicker way to do it. I didn't even think of that. It'd be this subject. Apologies for the little delay here. I want to get it up because I think it's worthwhile showing you that transition of where threshold versus VO2 versus running economy make or break races, or better predictors of performance. Again, while this loads up, it's just going to take a little bit, and then I have to quickly scroll through and find it because I think it's a really useful visualization. I guess a little bit of a follow-up before, Aaron, I'll come back to your question about triathlon once we get through this one, because I kind of want to stay on topic here. But coming back to the question, my own Garmin actually says I have 62, but I'm nowhere near the race predictions it gives. I'll check out the full video. Race predictions on Garmin, I would not trust them at all. Very, very, very skeptical about race predictions on Garmin, mainly from the fact that they way overestimate. I don't think I've had a single athlete actually be able to hit race predictions. Even some of the really fast guys, who they'll go and do a 2:40 marathon, which is a pretty moving pretty well, but what does it end up saying on their watch? It says they can do a 2:15, which is borderline world class. So that's kind of a bit, when I say a bit outrageous, it kind of is. It's a bit silly. So I wouldn't worry so much about the race predictions. VO2 as a number is pretty good on watches, but race predictors are pretty ordinary. They're not the best, not the most accurate. Let me scroll through here. Computer's just being a little bit laggy, so hopefully this doesn't take too long. But keep those questions coming through because I will get to them in a second once I have brought this one up. Scroll. Oop, might have gone past it. Here we go, the endurance section of this unit. Graph should be here somewhere. Got to find it. Here it is. I've got it. All right, cool. Let me go into screen share. Then I want Word. Here we go. There we go. Perfect. Hopefully you can all see this. I'll try and make it a little bit bigger. But this is the graph I was talking about that's in that video, and I break it down. So what we are looking at here is relative importance on the y-axis versus the distance of the race. And this is for runners. So we look at VO2 max here. Anything less than 1K, really it's going to be largely anaerobic to an extent, and a little bit aerobic towards the end. You can see that red line VO2 max coming up. 1K to 5K, big VO2 max contribution. It's almost all about VO2 max, really. Is our key focus there. Whoever has the highest oxygen consumption between 1 and 5K, and also what velocity at VO2 max. Not necessarily just how much oxygen you can get in, but what is the output that you can provide with that oxygen consumption. Middle distance, really good. And then as you can see, as we get closer to 5K, leaning towards 10K and beyond, things start to cross over. This crossover point's probably about that 10K mark. Your VO2 isn't necessarily as important, and the longer and longer this goes, the less and less important VO2 is. The more and more important is lactate threshold to that 10K, 12K, 45 to an hour makes sense is what our threshold is. So our percentage of VO2 max that we can hold, which is in most cases going to be measured by percentage of VO2 max is where threshold is really important. And anything longer and longer is all about that running economy. Can you minimize the oxygen cost or the physiological expense, really? How much do I have to generate to be able to produce that output? I could use hundreds of examples. It's changing the aerodynamics on your bike, or changing the bottom bracket bearing so it spins a lot cleaner and a lot faster. That's going to increase economy because you're not having to output as much power to get the same return in terms of speed on the road. That's what we're looking at here, but from a running perspective. So this is a really, really good demonstration of visualization of when VO2 max is really important and when it's maybe not so important, but What I will say is that it's not that we don't need to look at this and go, let's neglect VO2 max. The higher your VO2 max also means the higher all these things are sub-maximally. So lactate threshold, if your VO2 max is here and threshold's there, you go and train, you can't get threshold to exceed VO2 max. Threshold is the theoretical 45 to an hour intensity. VO2 max is basically a 5 to 7 minute flat out effort. You cannot get that 45 to an hour intensity above VO2 max unless VO2 max moves. It's always going to sit as a percentage. So having a high VO2 max might not necessarily be in a number. Like I said, it's more a running economy, but it's all about velocity or pace, power, speed at VO2 max. Let's lift that as high as possible, which likely comes as a result of having greater oxygen consumption. And that's where our really top end pro athletes are up at sort of, 75, 80. Had a client come in this morning who was well and truly up into the 70 sort of range, which was awesome as well. So it's the type of thing that once that oxygen consumption gets up there, we've got more to work with at the bottom. But again, the longer distance stuff, it doesn't necessarily mean that athlete's going to be a gun. It just means that we need to work on those other components. So this visualization of it, even if you want to take a bit of a screenshot, if you want me to send you through this graph, really, really good one for understanding that relative importance of our different physiological components for something like running and the distances of running. Similar would apply for things like cycling as well, but we just change slightly what those distances would look like because cycling's got a much greater spread of things that we might be looking at there, particularly when we start getting into this really short track stuff, really, really anaerobic at that point, and VO2 is kind of useless. But again, hopefully it gives you a bit of a perspective on that. Before I get into the question, Aaron's there's a pretty sort of funny comment here. We need more channel members so Nick can buy a faster computer. It's doing pretty well. It does a really good job, this computer. I am running a Mac and it does pretty well, but I've had it since I started my undergrad in uni sort of 5 or so years ago. So it's one of those things that eventually it's going to need an upgrade. But the more people who join as a channel member, the more it's going to help me get in and either upgrade the computer or change the camera so that doesn't burn on fire like it did last week. It didn't catch fire, but it was burning hot, but all those little things help. So if you do want to support the channel and help keeping the quality of these videos up by allowing me to upgrade some equipment and things like that, but then also spend the time on making some good content as well and more videos and answering more of your questions, hit the join button down below. Join up as Aaron has, get the little badge next to your name so you're easy to identify in the chat. You're always going to be one of our priorities in the chat. As this channel grows and we get more and more people jumping on these live streams, it's going to be more and more important to be a member so I can get to your questions first. And if we run out of time, you know that you're going to get your question answered first and foremost. But also in the comment section, I get a separate notification of when you guys as members comment. And it's really easy to see you when I'm scrolling through as well. So I always go through your ones and try and get yours first before I get through anyone else's. All right, finally coming back to your question after I've found that little picture to show you and that diagram to show you. Interested in triathlon, how many sessions of each sport should I be doing per week if I want to improve all of them? I worry I plateau by doing too much and I'm only running 4 of 7 at the moment. In terms of coming into triathlon, if we're looking at what would I do for someone who's relatively new, I would go, a best case scenario would be what I call a 2-2-2. So that would be 2 swims, 2 bike, 2 run. That would be a really good split across the week. Having 1 high intensity session for each ideally and 1 low intensity, long, slow, zone 2 for each is a really good starting point. If you just want to swim once a week, that's a good start as well. If you just want to bike once a week, again, good start. I like that 2, 2, and 2 because then it gives you a guaranteed rest day and you're not doubling up on any days necessarily. You can alternate it pretty well. I would typically see maybe like a Monday as a rest day, Tuesday as something like running intervals because they have a slightly higher neuromuscular load. Wednesday could be a swim, a longer, slower swim because you can use a little bit more sort of recovery and flush the legs out. Thursday, your bike intervals. Friday, maybe some high intensity in the pool, short and sharp, 50 meter efforts, 100 meter efforts, things like that. Keep it quite quick and sharp. Saturday, big long ride. Sunday, big long run. There's your 6 training sessions in the week. In terms of that worry, you're doing too much. I don't think like if you're doing 6 sessions across the week, I don't think you're going to be doing too much. It's just more of a case of what are you doing in those sessions and how are you loading them. Like if you're going out and doing big 6-hour rides, but you're only doing sprint distance tries, well that's just overkill, isn't it? So being smart about your volume is a big one. only running 4 or 7, I don't think is an issue as well. Maybe even if you're bringing in 2 swims and 2 bike, maybe you run 3 times a week. Maybe you run 2 times a week. You can actually drop that down a little bit, because remembering those runs are now going to be more and more about just the specificity of running and getting that running load and tolerance of load through your system, rather than the cardiovascular, because the cardiovascular aspect, or the aerobic endurance aspect that we're producing or trying to generate as a result of training, is going to happen by doing the other sports as well. So you may find that you stay just as fit, or you actually start to improve your fitness, because now you're going out and doing more volume in zone 2, because the bike is so much easier to go out for 2-3 hours than it is to go and run for 2 or 3 hours. You know what I mean? So we can actually get a bit more of a stimulus. You might actually find you improve by doing less training. We've seen that happen before. Athletes come from running, like a similar scenario, drop down, instead of doing 4 sessions a week, just do 2 sessions a week, and then maybe build in a third run because they like the running component. But doing the cycling is going to boost them up a little bit, just from that general aerobic fitness adaptation. Obviously, the specificity aspect of the sports is where you're going to improve from a performance aspect, being specific in training all the sports reasonably equally, but adding in the swimming as well is going to have a good cardiovascular or aerobic effect also. So all little things that you can consider when it comes to improving all of them. I'd absolutely be saying at the start, your running probably will plateau a little bit, only from the fact that, because that's where you're already, let's say, good at, that is a strength because that's what you've been training, being able to improve it beyond where you're at until everything catches up is going to be a bit tricky. Bike and swim, if you haven't really touched the swim, that'll improve really fast, as long as you get a good sound technique and you work on your technique. And then the bike, time in saddle is the number one key contributor to athletes improving extremely fast when they're coming into the sport of triathlon from a running background. You just need to spend time on the bike, and you will get fitter and you will get faster. It's almost a guarantee. Tweak the sessions, obviously, and be smart about your programming can just accelerate the development. But the more time you spend on the bike, the better. You're going to be in a much better position that way. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a guide to maybe follow. 2-2-2 is a really good starting point. You can then progress that to maybe 2 swims, 2 bikes and 3 runs. You could then progress that to 2 swims, 3 bike, 3 run if you really wanted to. The volume going up would then tend to lead to you doing longer distance events, like maybe a 70.3 or an Ironman is where I'd start to get into like maybe a 3-3-3, so 3 of each. Obviously factor in things like your strength and conditioning work, your gym work in there as well. It's going to be a couple of sessions. So worst case scenario, you double up on one day and don't have a complete rest day. It's pretty manageable still, because you're going to have a day where you're just doing strength and there's not much else. So it's pretty easy to say, when I say back up from, compared to doing like a run in the morning and then a bike in the afternoon, where if you have 3 swim, 3 bike, 3 run, you've got 9 sessions, there's only 7 days, you're going to have to double up twice at least, plus then strength is going to have to double up on days as well. So I like that 2-2-2. It works for a lot of athletes. I have a lot of athletes go and do 70.3 off that program, and they can go sub 5. I mean, it's something that you can do. You just got to be really specific and smart about exactly what's happening in each of those sessions. The added volume then is just the extra that if you want to go do it, you can. So again, hopefully it gives you a bit of perspective of how I would go about it coming into triathlon, and if you're sort of interested, how you can work your way in progressively. Just bring in that bike slowly, bring in the swim slowly, and get to a pretty even split across the week. You might need to neglect the run just for a tiny bit, or like put it off to the side and just accept that you might plateau. But as you start to progress, then you can bring in a little bit more running, maybe 3 runs, maybe 4 runs. Things start to progress a lot faster from there. I've just seen there, thinking of doing an Olympic distance, a 2-2-2 would be way more than enough. 2 swims, probably if anything, the 2 swims are going to be critical just to get the swimming under your belt if you don't have much of a swimming background. If you have a decent swimming background, you could probably get away with 1, but I'd probably recommend 2. Bike, you could get away with doing 1 big bike session if it's just a case of complete. If you want to perform in that Olympic distance and go as best you can and set a good time, 2 bike in the week, maybe even 3 as you progress, just to try and boost that up a bit faster, and then bring the running along. And sort of maintain rather than build until everything catches up, and then you can go from there. But Olympic distance, you don't have to go overboard on volume compared to like a 70.3, or then even compared to Ironman, you don't have to go overboard on volume. So you can be quite smart about minimizing how much you're doing in the week, but getting maximum benefit, if that makes sense. Minimal effective dose. Great questions coming through tonight, guys. Really appreciate it. We've been up for about 40 minutes now. Things ticking along pretty well. Hopefully you're enjoying tonight's stream. Some really good discussion as always. And as always, for anyone who's watching on the live stream or on the replay and you've maybe missed the start, things like that, the full replay is always up. We do have a playlist on the channel where you can go check out all the full replays and skip through to the points you've missed. But I'm always trying to get up a highlights package of the weekly live streams to get through the questions and just compress it in a little bit more bite-sized chunks so you're able to get straight to the point and we can cut out all the and in between. Things like me trying to find that graph from before, I can cut it out so you don't have to skip through all that. And we'll just get straight into the good stuff. Particularly as well when we have a large number of questions come through. Last week, the week before that, all going over an hour, hour and 10. There's a lot of content to get through. So if I can compress that down in sort of 20 minutes, it makes it a little bit easier for you to watch later on and get through and have a look at some of the great discussion we had. Keen to get through another couple of questions if there are some tonight. So anyone who is still in here, get involved. If you do have a question you want to ask, get it in the chat. Doesn't matter what it's about. Endurance, triathlon, running. We've had VO2 max questions tonight. We've had programming type questions tonight. We've had things on which led to the VO2 max side of things, led to discussions on running economy, lactate threshold, percentage of threshold. We have had strength questions tonight. Anything you want to get involved in and start up a bit of a discussion, feel free to chuck it in the chat. Otherwise, if there isn't any, happy to sort of keep it short and sharp tonight. If we've got through the questions from everyone who's jumped in. Again, appreciate it as always for jumping in and joining us tonight and getting involved. Particularly some of the guys that we see here regularly, week in, week out. Always good to see the same faces again. But also someone like Alex as well. Great to see you jumping in and getting involved in the live stream as well. Haven't seen you. I don't think I've seen you so far. Maybe once before in a live stream. But if this one is your first one, I really appreciate you jumping on and chucking your questions in. And then to guys like Aaron as well, some of our channel members that we see regularly with the little badge next to their name, really appreciate the support for the channel that you have had over the last little while since we started up from early days, but then also particularly by joining as a channel member and just going that extra mile to help me keep the channel running and producing some really good content for you guys. So if there is any other questions, leave them in the chat now. Speak now, forever hold your peace, or whatever the saying is. But otherwise, if there isn't anything, might wrap it up a little bit early tonight. Let everyone get back to the end of their day or the start of their day, as we saw before. For anyone who's on the other side of the world starting their day, more than happy to sort of wrap things up here. I'm going to give it last call in the chat. Any questions? Give it a second just to make sure it updates before I close it off. I think that's it. I reckon that's probably it for tonight. We'll wrap it up there. Nice and short one. When I say short one, I mean compared to some of our original live streams, 45 minutes isn't exactly short, but we got through a good amount tonight. Hopefully you enjoyed the discussion. As always, share the videos, pass it around. Let's keep growing this great community. We are currently at, I think I looked before, 2,442, I believe. 2,442 or 22, something like that. Subscribers on the channel. Really want to try and get that to 2,500, so super close. And if I have a quick look at Instagram as well, Instagram is at 933 followers. Let's get that to 1,000, a couple of goals. So for anyone who's in here still, get sharing, pass on the good word, share the channel, share the videos that are coming up. Get more involved in this great community because we are doing some great things. And I know you guys are getting plenty of value out of it. And let's keep growing it and building it with as many people as we can and spread the good word about learning about the science of endurance in a nice, simple way and talking about sports science in a really positive way as well. So thanks for joining us tonight. Again, appreciate you jumping in and getting involved. Thanks to everyone who's watching on the replay of the live stream as well. Continue to subscribe to the channel. If you want to join up as a member, always appreciate the support for the channel here. I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for joining us tonight. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one.